Welcome to Pilgrim Lost. Come walk with us while we explore life in hopeful motion. Hey, before we get started, Mark, I want to tell you about something. I've got a new walking superpower that I've
Wow.
stumbled upon in the last week that I must tell you has changed the game for me. Has changed the walking game for me. So, did you listen to music much? Do you listen to
No.
music when you're trekking?
Well, no, I mean, primarily because if you put on headphones, you can't hear the cyclist running up behind you. And
Yeah.
it becomes very, very dangerous. So any attempt to listen to any music, the headphones were gone. So no.
I often do one earbud and just kind of listen to a little music because that is a concern. But when back in 2018 when I walked the Camino, you get to that 15, 16 mile mark and the body would start to shut down. The body would, start to slow down. And I had this thing that would happen every once in a while. A song would come on and it would have this ability to infuse my walking with renewed power. And one of them was this song Come Alive from the musical The Greatest Showman. And that song would come on. All of a sudden I would find myself new energy and I'd be walking back up at my full optimal pace. It was great. And I started done a little bit of research, and I just think it was the beats per minute of the song that particular song is right in line with my optimum stride. And it would really, and so I'm leaving here next month for the Camino again, and I was thinking about this, how do I tap into this renewed energy power of this song? And I found jog.fm online, and it is a website for people who basically want songs of a particular beat per minute. Like if you want to build out a playlist, I went in, I put in 118 beats per minute, which is what that song from The Greatest Showman is, and I have built a playlist of almost 30 songs that are all perfectly to my optimum walking
Cool.
pace.
That is so cool.
So when in doubt, apparently, I can just turn it on and a Whitney Houston song might just invigorate my walking, or a little Michael Jackson will suddenly come on, or some Journey, or whatever happens to be on my playlist. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
That's very cool. Very cool. At 118, you said
118 beats per minute for me is perfect. So this has been a big deal. So we need to go get jog.fm to sponsor the podcast.
We should definitely,
because I can definitely support their work online because I am a user of their website. All right, let's get to today's guest.
Yeah, we are delighted, thrilled, and honored to have Dominik Parisien join us from the frozen tundra of the north. He's calling in from Hamilton, Canada, and we are just delighted to have him. I met Dominik and his beautiful wife Jen on the Camino. We had some meals together, we had some visits together, and I coming back, there were just a handful of really extraordinary people and stories that I encountered while I was away, and Dominik was one of those. It's really, really something special. So wow. We reached out to Dominik to see whether or not he was able to prize some time away from family and career and all the stuff he's up to see if he could take some time with us, and he's going to join us today. So with that, I will exit and we will bring in Dominik.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for sharing a friend with us. Dominik.
Hi, Tony.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Now that I've got my 118 playlist, I'm newly invigorated. Hey, so Dominik,
I love that you mentioned that because my wife actually uses that. She runs.
Yeah.
I struggle with running, but she loves running, and she actually uses beats per minute in terms of determining the songs for it. So as soon as you mentioned that, I was listening and nodding along vigorously because it's tremendously useful for her.
I'm probably just a late adapter. There's probably tons of people out there that are doing this, but I was like, how am I going to build this playlist? Super confusing. And of course, it's just a website dedicated to helping you pull it off. So thank you, Jen, for being an early adapter to what I'm just coming around to. So Dominic, you just got back from the Camino, which is great. You walked the full Française, is that correct?
Yes, all the way to Finisterre.
And then all the way to Finisterre, which is an additional 60 kilometers, 80 kilometers?
It's another 90 kilometers.
90 kilometers from
Santiago to
the ocean, to the easternmost point.
Yes,
or westernmost point.
Slightly confusing because then you hit that, but then you reach the lighthouse and you have to walk back into Finisterre. So
right.
So you're adding another 4 or 5 kilometers. It's just shy of 100 kilometers actually.
Yeah. I walked it as well. When I got to Santiago, my legs I didn't think I was going to, but my legs couldn't stop. They just wanted to keep walking. So I moved down ahead. So just give us a quick sort of 10,000 foot. How was the experience for you?
Tremendous. I have been using occasionally the word grueling. It was both transformative and grueling, and I think those go together. At least for me. So that's really the short of it is it was transformational, and I know that's an overused word for something like the Camino, but I have also never gone anywhere on my own because of my health. So in addition to the physical aspects of it, there was a tremendous psychological element associated with doing such a significant distance by myself.
Okay, well that's a fairly ominous thing to say, because of my health, and I don't want to pry, but can you tell me a little bit, because I don't know any details at all?
Right. So I have chronic daily pain. I have debilitating headaches that essentially I'm in pain every minute of every day. I have very severe headaches. I get confusion. I get dizzy spells. I can lose consciousness. I get very severe and violent convulsive episodes. So my body essentially collapses, and it looks like a grand mal seizure, but I scream. So it is very difficult. So for all of those, and I also only sleep no more than 4 hours a day. So something along the physical challenges of the Camino is very difficult, because it's possible for me to go 1, 2, 3 days without sleep occasionally. So combining all of those elements with physical exertion was very difficult.
All right. So I'm a little bit knocked off balance here, because that sounds insane. I mean, why would you go on the Camino?
Various reasons. The one that I usually say, a lot of people hearing that it's associated with something like the Camino, they immediately assume, oh, you want to go to be healed. And in fact, it's absolutely not that for me. It really has to do with personal challenge and personal growth. I had a number of people offer to travel the Camino with me, and I turned it down, specifically because, as I mentioned earlier, I have never traveled any great length of distance alone. I will do hikes alone, and those already make family members and my wife nervous. But they are very important to me. Walking alone is the greatest freedom that I know. I can't drive. So
Interesting.
All of those things together bring a tremendous sense of autonomy, of freedom, and it's walking is very important to me, both in terms of time for myself, but also connection. I feel very connected to people when I walk, because I take the time to dedicate extensive periods of time when I walk to people that I love. So I think about them. When I walk alone, I often call people that I love. So it sounds like a completely solitary experience, but it's deeply connected to me on a human level.
And is there a way, I mean, connected on a human level, is there a way that you're choosing to live by doing it? I mean, choosing to embrace the optimal sort of spectrum of life in the midst of it. Is that part of it as well?
It is. Choosing to live is a nice way of putting that, and it connects quite strongly for me because
Interesting.
I lived with fear for a very long time, and specifically, I lived with other people's fear.
Yes.
Everyone in my life was afraid of me being alone, and so younger, taking a trip somewhere was an act of assertion in a lot of ways, that that I was allowed to have a life that made me happy and that fulfilled me. And I have wanted to walk the Camino for a long time, and had determined that I probably never would, because it would, I was going to say scare the living hell. I'll say the living hell out of
Poop, shit. Say what you want.
Okay, yeah, it scared the living shit out of everyone in my life. And so I was constantly trying to modulate their fears in relation to that,
Right.
and not doing a thing that I wanted to do.
Wow.
And eventually I started talking to my wife about it, who also had a very strong emotional reactive fear to it, and then
Yeah.
instantly said, "This is a great idea and you should do it."
Wow.
And so she came around to it quite quickly, but mainly after saying, because she knows I write and that I would write about it. And she said, "Well, I want to read it. I do not want to live it."
Wow. Okay. So one thing that jumped out in that was, here you are, you're living with this neurological condition, I don't know what else to call it, but
Yeah, chronic illness. Yeah.
that affects you every day, affects your sleep, affects, I mean, real pain all the time. And yet you have to live your life modulating other people's fears and anxieties. You have to live your life sort of tending to the concerns of your family and friends. I mean, what an overwhelming burden. That's something that I think everybody experiences on a much lower level, modulating other people's anxieties, but I can't even imagine it from your standpoint.
I was certainly doing it to an unhealthy degree as well.
Good.
Therapy helped significantly with acknowledging the fact that it is, we have a responsibility to each other and to the people we love, but also you cannot be at all times responsible for the emotions of the people around you. And in trying to do that, I was also making myself miserable.
Wow.
So it was quite a challenge. And I have a lovely life and family and all these parts, and it really was an internal struggle. It was really coming from me. And so when I started walking longer distances alone, not just for the Camino, but sometime before, it really was a test both for myself and for the people around me. And the Camino was the logical extension of all of that.
You said that you'd wanted to go on the Camino for a long, long time, and you just assumed it was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
How did it become possible?
Through a series of changes. One, medical. Younger, I was, if that sounded already bad, what I described earlier, younger, it was much, much worse. I was in the hospital several days a week. Basically wasn't sleeping. I was having multiple terrible convulsive episodes a week. So my body was an absolute disaster. And over time, through medication and self-care and recognizing also my own limits, which was a very important thing for the Camino. For a very long time, I would not recognize that I had serious limitations. I did not want to admit that to myself, even though I've been chronically ill the vast majority of my life. And I was making myself struggle more. I was making myself even more ill by not working within those limits. And I also didn't have the medication that I have now. So what made it possible really was better doctors, better medication, a better understanding of what my body can and cannot do.
Right.
And also challenging myself and my family to recognize that these risks are inherent with my life and that we all have to live with them.
Right. Yeah, because of all the physical changes, medication, doctors, things like that, the longest journey probably is the belief system that
Yes.
I'm going to allow this level of risk into my life, because all of us
Mhm.
are imprisoned by a subjective construct of fear, of what is possible, what am I willing to do, how do I protect myself, how do I protect my children, how do I protect my home, how do I protect my dreams, how do I make sure that I never get hurt again. These are things that confine all of us, and you had to come to a renewed belief system, a new possibility construct that made the Camino now within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and it's funny because in terms of what is possible, some years ago, it probably would not have been possible, and not only because of the medical aspects in terms of what the medication that I have and the treatment, but it would not have been possible because I did not have the same level of self-respect that I do now. I had less concern for my physical well-being in my life, and therefore was more willing to push in ways that were unhealthy. And eventually I came to a far more balanced understanding of that. And so, if I would previously walk, for example, instead of stopping at a proper time or asking for help or asking someone for a ride or that sort of thing, I'd push through because that's what you were supposed to do. That's the heroic narrative. That's the expectation. When you have pain or disability, I had inherited a lot of ableist notions around that. So I would push, and then someone would find me convulsing on the side of the road because I had not listened to my body, and I was listening to a narrative that didn't conform to my life and my body, and also was deeply unhealthy.
Right. Dominik, are you in pain right now?
Yes.
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
The truth of the matter is that I'm in pain every minute of every day. The degree to which I'm in pain fluctuates. So, especially on video, you might see that I will grimace periodically, and that's just a larger pain jolt that comes through. But there is underlying pain there at all times, and a lot of people don't necessarily see it because they don't necessarily know what to look for, but it is very much there.
I think we're all just grateful that you would spend a few minutes sharing in the midst of pain. That's just unbelievable.
Well, I'm happy to be here. In every way,
Oh, what does it look like for you to listen to your body? Or what is that experience like?
Now it's a far more, I guess you would say, holistic or positive aspect. Before, it was very adversarial. In my younger days, I would recognize that my body was warning me for various things. My pain would increase. I'd be getting increasingly confused or shaky, and it was deeply adversarial, specifically around illness. When you lack framework for it, the frameworks that we inherit are things like, the person had a battle with illness for a very long time and lost this when they died, or
Right.
this person overcame these things. So it is a necessarily confrontational and combative approach to it, or at least it was for me, because this is what I was hearing around me and the narratives that I inherited from media and the things that I was reading, and also from a lack of people with similar experiences around me. And eventually it became far more, conversational. It became far, it sounds weird having like a conversation with your body, but
No.
it's more in terms of a conversation with yourself and listening to the things that you are experiencing.
Yeah.
It can be a bit tricky for something like the Camino, because pain is not necessarily a negative thing. We think of it negatively, but when you're walking, if you are experiencing pain in certain areas, it is your body telling you, sending messages to you that something is wrong, or that you are going
Right.
that you are pushing too much. And when you have chronic pain, it can be difficult to discern what's what, because sometimes I have overwhelming pain that I don't always know if it's because I'm pushing too hard, or if it's just because it's been several days and my pain has been steadily high. So that's certainly one of the challenges for me, and in doing any kind of physical endeavor.
So having somehow managed to walk 500 miles over a period of weeks, which is shocking to me. Were the things that you were able to build into your trek to sort of make it more possible for you? Did you have to stay in hotels, for instance, so you had a room to yourself, or like how did all that work?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because one of the things that I was paying particular attention to on the Camino were people's ideas of what you do on the Camino and what you're supposed to do.
Yes,
Which
one
is
of our favorite topics on Pilgrim Walk.
Exactly. It's I've listened to episodes about this, and to discussions and from other pilgrims and books, and it's an ongoing theme, because for me, I am certain that I did it wrong in the ways that some people would assume. When I set out, you said I walked. Yes, it's wrong with in giant quotation marks. But when I was in Saint Jean and I was at the pilgrim office, the woman asked, how many days do you expect? And my response was, maybe 40, maybe a little more. And she looked completely stunned. And she expected an answer, because she saw me. I'm 34 years old. I look quite fit, or at least relatively fit. And she was sort of incredulous as to why it would take me that long, because people, can do they can do it when they're doing 30 kilometers or more a day, and you can do it in 30 something days.
Right.
And I was immediately envisioning, no, I am putting in days of rest. I am doing shorter days where, I rarely went beyond 25 kilometers. And at first I tried doing a little more, and eventually was decreasing down to about 22, sometimes a little shorter, depending on how much my body was struggling. And so I was doing, very much at my own pace, and I was consistently adjusting for that. I did stay in not so much like not luxurious hotels, in the way they stay at the Parador, and I wasn't doing like that, but I was taking like hostels, like I was doing private rooms.
Yeah.
I was taking significantly longer to walk in the day than a lot of pilgrims were. Sometimes I would arrive a solid 2 hours later than people who had left at the same time as I had. Sometimes even a little later, sometimes about the same time. It depended on the day.
Right.
But it was an extremely adaptive journey for me. And that's really one of the things that made it possible. There's a lot of people who will say that you need to be in the albergues to have that aspect of community and struggle. And I did a handful of those, and they were exceedingly difficult for me because of the challenges to sleep and the difficulties with resting. And so it cost more than I would have liked, or that would have cost being in the really inexpensive albergues. But that compromise was one of the most important things to allow me to do it.
Right. Excuse the ham-handedness of this next question, but did you experience dramatic convulsive episodes during the walk?
Yes. I have a nifty new little scar up above my eyebrow. That one wasn't even from a convulsive episode. It was a blackout, and I broke my glasses and split this open on some rocks.
I'm sorry.
I had 2 major convulsive episodes on the walk, 2 blackouts, and some other just difficulties in terms of health and struggles. But those were the most obvious ones. But we had that expectation, and I also had a safety helmet with me. So I had a very good quality hiking helmet, which is very, very light, but very sturdy. And I had it strapped to the side of my backpack. And in any case of, if I was alone for a long period of time and I was struggling significantly, too much pain, too much dizziness, that sort of thing. I did fall a few times as well, just a bit of a dizzy spell. And one of those times, I had the helmet and I fell face first on some very sharp rocks. But again, the helmet took the whole hit. So I would wear it anytime that I was alone for a really long period of time, or if I was struggling too much, or if it was obvious that I was going to have a convulsive episode, if my pain was getting to an unmanageable degree and I was starting to shake too drastically, I would ask the help of a pilgrim or anyone around me to help me strap the helmet on and then lie down and be prepared for that eventuality.
There's an ancient Hebrew term that's it's emblematic of courage, sort of what, and the best translation to English is overcomer, the one who overcomes. I just hear so much of that in your story. It's very inspiring. What was it like for you to walk into Santiago, having overcome so much?
So before I get to Santiago, I will make one note. Specifically within disability discourse and disabled communities, a lot of us are quite resistant to the word overcome.
Interesting.
And so am I, because for me, doing this walk was never about overcoming my physical challenges and my disability. It was about doing it with them.
Thank you.
So and you know, and I don't say that like in a way that's offended or anything of the sort. It's more that it's a very common narrative around disability, and for a lot of people, it overcoming sort of ignores a little bit sometimes the fact that you have to listen to your body very actively, and you have to work with what your limitations are, because if you're constantly striving to go beyond those, that's how you get injured, that's how you get sick, that's how you do not live within a way that is respectful of what you can do. And not everyone has that opinion. You know, some people in disability communities are quite flattered when you tell them something of that nature. But there is a great deal of resistance to that type of narrative.
Thank you.
I know that's a little diverging, but
I like it.
Santiago, walking into Santiago was very strange for me. I think it's the range of experiences for everyone is completely different. The thing that surprises people a little bit when I talk about doing the Camino is that Santiago meant nothing to me from the beginning.
Okay.
I wanted to walk the Camino as a level of personal challenge and as a cultural experience, and very much as a way to get beyond my fears in relation to my health. But Santiago, the place, had very little meaning, and not being a religious, it lacks that sacred connotation as well. And on a level of personal accomplishment, it could have been very significant, but by then I had decided already that I would walk to Finisterre, so I knew that it was not, in fact, the completion of what I had set out to do.
Right.
The reason why it was tremendously significant for me in a completely different way is that my wife was, her name is Jennifer. Jen was meeting me there. And she had, yes, and she had seen me off in Saint-Jean.
Oh, wow.
And then she had gone, she is able to work from a distance, so she had gone to France for the time that I was walking. And then she was waiting for me next to the cathedral. Wow. So even though the sacred element was not there, the personal element was tremendously powerful, because with my health, it took even a little bit longer than I even anticipated. It took 47 days, which includes rest days,
right,
to reach. So we had been apart for 47 days. And the particularly significant thing is that we had been married for a week when I set out on the Camino. Yes. So, okay. So that was it was incredibly powerful to finally see her. And on the Camino, while I was walking, I had eventually asked her if we could walk to Finisterre together. So I knew that it was going to be.
Stop. I can't get past. You've been married for a week. You got
I knew that was coming.
A week before you started on the Camino, like a week before Saint Jean, you got married.
Yes. So, and everyone, that's your reaction is exactly the one that happened with everyone on the Camino. People would say, "What is wrong with you?" Others would say, "Oh, so you're on your honeymoon right now, alone."
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. So what happened is we are actually doing our wedding reception in 3 weeks.
Okay.
So what we had decided to do is, we have both previously been married, and we, not knowing what could happen with the Camino and with my health, we've knew we wanted to be married, and some months before, Jen just very practically came up to me, sat next to me, and just said, we should get married before you leave. And I'll admit I was playing video games in that moment, so I tried to put them down, and she said, no, don't look at me. Like, I just want this to be a very casual conversation. So I guess
This is so
that
weird.
was like her unofficial. It was her unofficial proposal, I guess. It's funny. We think it's like very charming and lovely. So what we decided to do is we're going to get married a little bit after, but we decided to do it before, and to do it completely privately. So before leaving for the Camino, we took a little trip to Nice, which was going to be our honeymoon / wedding. And we, just the two of us, did our vows, exchanged our rings, cried a lot. And then a week later, she saw me off in Saint-Jean.
Why the urgency? Was it your health? Was that the urgency? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm still a little confused.
Yeah, so one of the things was, it doesn't sound like the most romantic thing, but to me it is, and to both of us it is, doing it really privately in that way. But some of the urgency was a little practical. It's that I made a will before leaving on the Camino. We had talked about the fact that neither one of us being particularly fluent in Spanish. I can speak rudimentary Spanish, but I think I sound like a 5-year-old. If I ended up in a hospital in very dire condition, we wanted her to have uncontested access. We wanted her to have decision-making process.
Right.
So those things were all important. And the other thing, frankly, is that there's some sense of urgency, but there was also just some sense of a fun and adventure as well, as we had repeatedly talked about doing a reception with family and friends, but to sort of elope locally or something, to just have a very private wedding. And the more we talked about it, it would be really great to do it just the two of us in another country, away from everyone, and then just sort of pop online with our pictures and say, hey, look at this. And so there was an aspect of fun, adventure, romance, and also medical practicality. So it's all of those things together. And when you experience things like convulsions and these sort of things, I've gotten concussions, some serious concussions in the past because of it. I've had some very scary situations. And when you're walking in the mountains and all these places, you don't know what could happen. And we knew we wanted to be married and to have that together regardless. So
what an adventure you are living.
I think so.
The semi-secret marriage in Nice, the 47 days walking across Spain, a family reception in 3 weeks. I'll buy my plane ticket when we get off here. And it's and then you mentioned that you're a writer. Are you putting this stuff on, putting pen to paper about all this you're going through?
Yes, so I do have a book contract. I do have a book contract with a good publisher in Canada, which I can't say the name just yet because they haven't announced it.
That's fine.
But I do write quite extensively about health in a lot of literary journals in Canada and other places, and I do I do poetry, nonfiction, fiction. I edit as well. So I work in publishing and literature, and I frequently write about these subjects. So I knew from the start that I was going to be writing about this, and a publisher was quite interested from the start.
So you'll be writing about the walk, the Camino, and can you give us the theme?
Yes. So the book has the Camino as a framework. Right. So so it happens within the bounds of the Camino, but it deals extensively with magical healing and disability, the ways that people approach disability and disabled people, and the ways that they want to change them, heal them, the ideas that they have surrounding that,
right.
And which includes cultural ideas. So it's a memoir, but it's a memoir that moves beyond just me and my body and looks at the broader themes and conversations around this sort of thing. So it was very important to me to also talk to other pilgrims with pain or who are disabled on the Camino, and it involves other aspects of my life and childhood that in terms of the Camino were quite important. Like, I've had an exorcism younger, I was brought to a faith healer.
Fascinating.
So something like the Camino was a very difficult space for me, in more than I anticipated, actually. Because of the trauma associated with those things.
Okay, that's like a whole nother episode. So first of all, will you please keep us updated on the process of publishing? I've published several books, so I know that it can be a long process, but keep us updated. Absolutely. So we know when it's out, so we can get copies. And then is there any chance you'd be willing to come on once the book is out? Maybe I get a chance to read it and we can just kind of talk about some of that connections to your childhood. That to me is amazing and fascinating. And having lived a lot in the spirituality space through my life and written in that space, I wrote a whole book about how basically people are lying when they say they've encountered God. That so much of that is built around lies, and that religion really perpetuates this idea that God is somehow tangibly present, when most people they just make up stories about it in order to sort of survive. And so I'm super interested in what you're writing, and I hope I get a chance to talk to you about it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to chat about it.
That's fantastic. Before we let you go, is there anything you haven't had a chance to say you'd like to say? Anything that just about your experience or coming home, or anything that you haven't had a chance to say?
I guess I just, beyond like the Camino, I was listening to you and Mark talk earlier about the return part. And one of the things I'll say that was very useful for me is that I had listened to quite a few podcasts where they had those discussions around returning. So I think I had prepared myself mentally quite a lot about the ideas of that. And I'm surprised in some ways that I'm not missing that much doing all that walking. I thought I would miss it a little more. And I think like I'm very happy to be hiking again, but also I think because hiking was part of my life and my process, my wife and I love to go hike on the weekends, and I was often doing it in the week as well. So there's still some of that element of continuity there. And I think that, if it's already part of your practice in some way, I think that's so helpful if it's part of your practice before you leave, and if you continue some of it after.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's helpful, but it's just it was popping into my mind earlier when I was listening to you and Mark in the introduction, and I was just thinking, oh, that's interesting. I think I thought it was maybe a little bit different for what I was experiencing.
Fantastic. And so much of what we talk about is the themes of walking doing a great trek, a great adventurous trek, like walking across Spain. Those themes can be brought home. You know, you talked about the human connectedness you experience when you're walking, and you're on the phone with family, or you're connecting with the people as you walk. Those can be part of our everyday. And walking is this incredible way to be at the same speed as your neighbor and sort of connect in that unique way, or whatever it might be. And so, all to say, Dominik, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. Really,
thanks for having me.
Feel honored by your story. You'd share it with us and with the community, and everybody. If you have any thoughts based on what Dominik shared, we'd love to hear about it. Please send us an email, send us a note, connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever. And Dominik, thank you. And this has been Pilgrim Lost. Thanks for getting lost with us.